Uh, Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Targraves. I'm one of the core advisors at Belmores, and I hope you've enjoyed the first two presentations as much as I have, and I've really got a lot out of it. But I'm here to introduce our third and final speaker, Phil Almeida from Performance Property. I'll probably let you introduce yourself, Phil, but just we've used Phil and had a relationship with Phil and his team for probably 20 years at Belmores. And he's bought a lot of properties for some of our clients. We've had a really good return on those properties. So Phil, we give him a warm welcome.
Thanks very much, and even your old man as well. So good to see you still in the business. Fantastic. Yeah, look, we've had a really great relationship with Belmores. It's been fantastic, even with jobs time. So it's almost been 30 or 40 years. So it's been a long time. So yeah, good to see. So before we start, all the advice is general in nature. So if you do want to have a chat, come and have a chat to me after the meeting. So this is the life journey. I think I touched on this on the presentation last year. Everyone tries to buy their house. They upgrade their house. They look to pay down debt. Their kids usually go to private school. They start their own business. So we try and dissect this down and talk about the life journey, the property journey when a client's looking to build their portfolio. We want to make sure it's done in a very methodical, process-driven manner. And that's why we've built the data business to basically have a buy, hold, sell recommendation on every property asset in Australia. We've got about 115 staff now. So when we first started with you, Ben, all those years ago, we had 3 of us. We've got 3,000 clients. And we buy about 500 to 800 properties a year as a business. So we're growing, but we want to make sure that your portfolio is managed in the right way. So this is generally what we look for when we're looking at a client's portfolio. Residential, we want to try and generate a growth rate of around 6 to 7% and 3% income. If it's a commercial asset, we want to generate a net yield of around about 6 to 7%, and we want around 3 to 4% capital growth. So commercial and residential properties, I find, blend in really well if you get the mix right. And some of these assets we go and buy to trade and sell down and pay down debt on our clients' homes, which is the first thing that you try and manage over time. And those are assets that we go and look in the market. We might say take a 5 to 7, 9 year view on that asset. And when it's increased in value by more than 50%, we'll tell the client, hey, it's reached its potential. Perhaps maybe let's liquidate that asset, pay down debt on the home, and let's go again. And we might look at a blue chip residential property, or you want to increase the quality of what you're buying every time you go and buy that next asset. That's what we try and do with our client base over a 20, 30 year period. It's a long-term process. So the foundation assets are assets we're going to hold long-term. We're never going to sell them down. And they're usually assets in capital cities. They're usually blue chip commercial assets at that 2 mil plus range. A lot of our business owner clients are buying their principal places of business residences, and they're usually going to the super fund, and we eventually pay that down over a 10 or 20 year period based on their circumstances. So every client is different. Every client has a different scenario. It's about us understanding your position and making sure that we're giving you the right advice. Now, best market over the last, say, 5 years has been Adelaide. Everyone that thought that Adelaide, anyone from Adelaide in this room? Show of hands. Yep, good. We struggled with our Melbourne and Melbourne clients and Sydney clients saying we don't want to go and buy an asset in Adelaide. We showed them the data, and 78% up the last 5 years. It has been one of the best performing residential markets over the last 5 years. So we purchased just over $800 million worth of residential property over there, over that 5 year period. We think owner-occupier is going to now drive the market up, and we're out of Adelaide for the first time. So we've had a great run. It's been a fantastic market. It's a great market if you want to retain and hold that asset long-term and hold it in your portfolio as your blue chip asset. But from our end, we're no longer buying in Adelaide. Had a fantastic run. Second to that has been Brisbane. There's a lot going on in Brisbane in terms of infrastructure spend. There's 25 hospitals being built. So we track every infrastructure project above 10 mil across the country. There's a lot of healthcare investment because a lot of the Brisbane people or Queenslanders call us Mexicans coming over the border. So all the Melbourne owner-occupiers and Sydney owner-occupiers that have got a lot more to spend are pushing the local owner-occupier in Brisbane out of the housing market. Those local Brisbane owner-occupiers are being pushed into the Queensland regionals. So Toowoomba is starting to grow. Townsville is starting to grow. Some of those sub-regional markets in Queensland are really starting to move because they're affordable. And you've got these people from Sydney buying $5-6 million houses in Noosa and pushing all the locals out of the market as well. Probably the real opportunity in this data set here is Melbourne. We think Melbourne's probably the cheapest that we've seen it since 2016, 17, 18. And I'll show you a slide on that just after this, but there's a number of arguments why Melbourne hasn't performed. Show of hands in the room, who likes paying land tax? Land tax has almost doubled the last 5 years in terms of our view. Our clients that have got $10 million worth of holdings in Victoria are paying land tax bills of more than $200,000 a year. So we are now having to look at their portfolios, sell down some of their existing assets and consolidate that and invest outside of Victoria, purely for that reason. The land tax bills are getting higher. But if you don't own anything in Melbourne, and we've been investing in Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth, Sydney over the last 10 years, we think this Melbourne market is distressed. We're seeing opportunities for the first time in a long time. Our head office is in Melbourne, and we haven't been buying anything in Melbourne for a good 8 to 10 years. So we think, good news, for the first time, there are going to be opportunities probably over the next 12 to 24 months. So we're going to see some interest rate movement. Everyone that thinks that interest rates will come off 100 basis points over the next 6 months is for it. I think it's going to happen a lot slower. It's going to happen over, say, an 18-month to 24-month period. So we've got a little window in Melbourne to buy really good quality residential stock for our clients. And we've probably been a lot more active in the commercial industrial arenas in Victoria than we have in the residential sectors. So this, in Melbourne, this is going to be, and all over Australia, this is going to be the year of the rent rise. There is simply not enough bedrooms to cater for the incoming overseas migration. Developers can't build any particular asset on the ground, so their feasibilities aren't stacking up at the moment. So we're moving into a significant undersupply. Governments are taxing investors quite aggressively. Our clients are saying, Phil, we've built this portfolio for 20 years. We're just sick and tired of the maintenance, the land tax, and the government charges. We can't do it anymore. We're fed up. So we're finding that over the next probably 12 to 24 months, we're going to see rental increases in Melbourne by anywhere between 10 and 20%. And it's a big call in our view, but there's just simply not enough stock coming into the market. So vacancy rates nationally are sub 2% currently. And they're all sub 2% in every capital city across the country. This is the supply argument that I just touched on before. We're actually short on accommodation in both the unit and housing sectors by more than 174,000. So over 66,000 or 63,000 units and just over 110,000 houses. So governments have come out with this mandate saying you've got to build 1.2 million homes over the next few years. The Victorian government's come out, so you've got to build these houses. Planning changes and planning reforms just aren't keeping up with the amount of supply. And then if I show you the next slide, this is my concern here. Look at the amount of people coming into the country. So you've got, obviously, net overseas migration is a big one for us. We're concerned because there's not enough rental accommodation to cater for that income demand. So what is that going to do to rents? Rents are naturally going to rise. We've got investors exiting the market because they're tired, they're fed up. So it's going to put more pressure on rental accommodation to increase. Build to rent, there's only a few thousand build-to-rent projects going up. That's not going to hit our particular targets. It will hit a certain section of the market, but not naturally. So from our end, we either have to slow down overseas migration, which I don't really want, we don't want to happen, or we've got to relax the ability to develop assets or look after the investor. The investors are supplying a lot of the rental accommodation in this country, but the governments are going after them. Now, this is Melbourne. So Melbourne, in terms of the affordability index, this is the percentage of your own income going to service home loan debt. So at the moment, it's running at 53%. So 53% your household income is going to service home loan debt. You can have a 20% deposit in going out buying loans. Does anyone want to guess what it is in Sydney? We spoke about this last year. Who was actually writing notes there? 60? Yeah. Damon, what do you think? 70? Good. 88%. So if you're a Sydney first home buyer, you finished university, you've got your graduate job, you're on, getting paid $80,000 a year. And how can you go out and buy your $1.5 million entry level 1-bedroom unit? It's tough. So from our end, we actually do still feel that rents will rise in this market, but the affordability index in Melbourne is actually trending downwards. This is the price to income ratio for houses and units. So you can see in comparison to Sydney, we're running at 8.6 times income. If you look at Sydney, we're actually running at 14 times income. It's one of the most expensive places to live in the world. So Sydney's become a global city. Melbourne, like for like, Melbourne's actually cheaper than Brisbane at the moment for the first time in 10 years. So we're starting to show for the first time that Melbourne's starting to show value, both in units and houses. We'll go there. This is obviously stock on market. This is the concern. So you can see that investors are starting to exit. Currently, there's 39,000 dwellings on the market for sale. So the worry is, once you start to see stock increasing on the market, people are getting rid of all their investment properties because we've held it. The net yields on a residential investment here in Melbourne is 1.5%. Why would you go and buy a property like that? So what you want to see in terms of evidence when you assess the data sets, the first trigger is you start to see rental growth moving along in the housing sector, and then price growth follows. This year in Melbourne, we're going to see strong rental growth, and then in 12 months, 24 months time, we're going to start to see for the first time in a long time. This is obviously the vacancy rate I touched on before. So to go and rent just an average property house in Melbourne is going to cost you $760 a week. What's the average rent of a Yarrawonga house or a 3-bedroom house? 500? 500? Yeah. Yarrawonga values over the last 3 to 5 years have really moved along and accelerated as well. Because people are tired of living in Melbourne, they can't afford it, and they're getting pushed down into the regions. So I actually think the regionals are better value than some of the other areas around Australia. Job vacancies, you can see there's a little bit of a slide in both public and corporate job vacancies at the moment. I'm not going to touch on Sydney because I just said, don't buy anything in Sydney. That's just simplifying it. So we'll skip through all of that. But look at the price to income ratio for houses, 13.9 times. Yeah, I haven't seen it that high. It got back to 14, but yeah, it's just definitely not a market that I'd be advising to invest in right now. Look at the disparity between the prices of houses and the prices of units. When you start to see a nice healthy gap in that particular section, you might want to start looking at blocks of units or older style units within that market. So when we got into Sydney after the GFC, the Sydney 35% of the workforce is finance, come from a finance related role. We started buying all the houses and terraces, and we had a 3-year run where we went out and purchased 800 terraces in Double Bay, Rose Bay, because all these people on higher incomes weren't receiving their bonuses, and guess what? They had to go and liquidate their assets. So we started buying all these terraces and putting into our client super fund. And I think we did a couple for your clients back then, all that time ago, and we were working with stock, and they've all performed a terrace in Paddington that cost maybe $650,000 back then to $800,000. What do you think it's worth now in today's value? Roughly. And it's at, who said two? Two? Yeah, so it's worth about $3.5 million. You know what the land component on this little terrace is? 150 square meters. So look, stock on market in Sydney is increasing. It's up to 33,000. So things are tough at the moment. Vacancy rate's 1.5%. To rent a house in Sydney, it's going to cost you $750. It's going to cost you $1,048. $1,048. And even the units, 700. So what would it cost to rent a house in Melbourne? You can only get a unit in Sydney. Job vacancies are good. So there's plenty of work. There's a lot of infrastructure going on in Sydney, which is good. Now, this is the property clock. So these are some of the areas that I advise you not to buy in. So look, if you can stay away from the areas in the downside risk sector, that would be advisable. You can see Melbourne, when we met last year, was in that stagnation phase. So for the first time in a while, we've finally started to move Melbourne into that buy value stage. It's going to make our job a lot easier. We're not flying around the country looking at other assets. Perth is in that buy momentum phase. So Perth last year in the housing sector did 25% in terms of growth. We've had a great run. We've probably got another year or two left in Perth, and then we're going to start to exit that market. And then we'll advise our clients to sell down that particular asset, pay off the debt on the house, and then go. So from my end, you can see that the Melbourne unit market's looking like good value in both the unit sector. The Sydney unit market's probably better value than the housing sector. Brisbane, we've got a hold recommendation. So we're not buying aggressively, but we're not selling. There's still another 2 to 3 years of growth. And that will ride into the Olympics, but I wouldn't be holding the Brisbane asset. And it happened in Sydney. We actually did a study on this in terms of how the Olympics affected the property value. I would, if I had a property in Brisbane, I'd be exiting 1 to 2 years out before the Olympics. Okay. Ipswich, we've had a really good run in Ipswich, but from a lower price point of view, Townsville's looking really good. It's got a population of 200,000 people. There's a lot of infrastructure going on there, a lot of investment. You can pick up a good quality old style house on 600 square meters for $650 to $700 grand. And you get $600 a week for that asset. So reasonable return. Now, compared to last year, we probably have a forecasted forward planning in terms of our data set. So this is all our own IP in terms of what we've built out. What you want to be looking at, you probably want assets within that upper quartile or quadrant of this particular market. And it's probably the best markets, even though we're not buying in these markets, are Cairns, Darwin, Gladstone. Greater Perth is still about showing value. You can see areas like Rockingham, pockets, Brisbane, they're still showing some sort of value. The concerning areas for us, does anyone own a property in Launceston in this room? No? Good. So Launceston is probably going to take a little while to improve in terms of value, and Ballarat. Ballarat's been a really poor performer in our view over the last, say, 6 months. Government pulled out a lot of the Commonwealth Games spending. It was very much affected by government-type related decisions. Out of our hands, we're not advised, if you've got a property in Ballarat, our strong advice is to hold, do not sell it right now. So all the investor market exited, owner-occupiers aren't buying, rents are slowing, so we need to see rental growth moving again. I think interest rates will start to fuel some of that growth, but for the time being, just hold, and we'll advise you to ride it through. And do you want to look at Geelong as well? Yeah, Geelong's the other one. Geelong's not. So we track every building rate, every house and land sale. So we look at the amount of land sales that are occurring within that particular area in growth markets, Armstrong's Creek, areas around Leopold in that particular section, and no one's building. So it's really starting to slow down. So government, and we met with state government last week. We met with the opposition leader. Senator Allen wouldn't meet with us because he's pretty angry around some of the decision making that's being made. We met with Danny Pearson. We grilled him on the suburban rail loop and the budget, the budget that's going to be blown out quite dramatically. There's going to be an election in November next year, in our view. So we're of the view that Liberals are very pro property. We won't get into politics, but Labor, in terms of the debt position currently, is extremely concerning and have to start paying that. So they're going to have to stimulate rather than punish the investor in Melbourne and Victoria. We're going to have to do something about this. This is the runway for units. So you can see that Darwin, Mildura, Townsville, Gladstone, Rockhampton are showing real value. Again, look at all the other ones on their knees: Ballarat, Geelong, and Launceston. So they will improve over time, but the data sets for us aren't looking that strong. Commercial, as you know, we're very active in the commercial space. A lot of our clients are selling down 2 or 3 of their residential assets and saying, Phil, let's go and buy something for $2 million where the tenant pays for the land tax. We get a long-term lease on that property. There is tenancy risk associated with those types of assets, but we love commercial property and we think it plays a really big part in the client's portfolio. At the moment, the last year has been tough for us. Industrial sectors perform really well. 44% of all the industrial logistics centre is here in Victoria. So a lot of the logistics is made up in Victoria. From our end, we only really buy commercial assets on yields of 5.5% or more. We've really got to show value, but they are out there. We're buying a third of our client base are medical-based clients, so we're buying a lot of healthcare type related assets for our client base. That's working really well. Our clients that want a passive long-term hold needs to be 5.5% plus. There's been a big change in Sydney just recently. I'm pretty sure that you're on top of this, but medium long-term development sites, there's been a change there across 170 suburbs. They want to introduce 112,000 new dwellings to low to medium density. So they're going to increase the height ratio of some of these blue chip suburbs across the inner city areas of Melbourne. That's going to come into effect. The issue is, if a developer wants to develop that medium density or increase the height ratio, developers can't get their feasibility stack up. It's too expensive to build. And look, we're buying distressed office. No one wants to touch office. We like it because if you can ride it through the next 3 to 5 years, you buy at the distressed valuation. We looked at a property at 480 St Kilda Road on the Sydney Fringe area of Melbourne. Australian Unity, which was a large fund that you're probably all aware of, had the building value last year at $83 million. We put a bid in with 50 mil to syndicate together. We ended up missing out on that property. The buyer that bought it put in the due diligence period and then pushed the price further down. So they offered 55 and put it under a due diligence clause. And they ended up picking up for $38 million because there was a number of maintenance issues associated with the property and they kept on pushing the price down. So what I'm saying is office in Melbourne is quite distressed and it's opportunistic if, so some of our wealthier families are just fine freestanding commercial building for 10 to 50 people and there's value in Canada. But no one's touching it. No one wants to buy it. These are a couple of examples. So this is typical of what you buy in. This is in Brunswick. And when I was with Jock, we were buying a lot of stuff in Brunswick at the time. It's gone full cycle 20 years later, where for the first time we're buying assets on 400 to 500 square meters of land. You're picking this up for land value. So the block of land is worth 1.3 to 1.4, and you're paying very little for the house. This is a super fund purchase that we bought in Paran in Melbourne. Very simple, 1.1 mil. Put into the super fund. It's fairly well renovated. People don't want to buy unrenovated properties anymore. People don't want to spend money on maintenance because it's painful. So people are starting to pay a premium for renovated stock. This is an older style block of units. This is a pharmacy client that we bought this for. Has the capacity developed at the rear. We're going to spruce them up, renovate them. So we've got a renovation team. We do the rentals. We do the management. We do the facilities management. So we're not afraid to get our hands dirty. And those are the types of opportunities we're looking at the moment. This is a car wash, you know, in right next door to La Trobe University. It's 6.83% net yield already, and it's actually got development uplift to go to 5 levels. So you can hold it, get a reasonable yield, and get some uplift. And that finishes there. Anytime.